Good morning and welcome to our last webinar of the year. Today, we're going to be talking about an enhanced disclosure to address advertising to children. I'm joined by my two colleagues today who will introduce themselves now, starting with David.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm David. I work on the copy advice team at the CAP, and we give pre-publication advice to advertisers in a free 24-hour service. So that's me.
Thanks, David. And yeah, hi, everyone. My name's Adam. I'm in the same team as David, joined in September of this year in the copy advice team as well.
Thanks both. So, signing off on what we hope that you're going to learn from at the end of today's training. So we hope by the end of today's session, you'll feel confident in recognizing when you need to provide enhanced disclosure and how to provide enhanced disclosure. So very simple today. And here's just an overview of some of the topics that we're going to be discussing today and how we're going to break the content down. Now, just a bit of housekeeping. This session is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be available on our website and on our YouTube channel after. If you want a copy of the slides, I can also send that to you if you find that beneficial. If you do have any questions, we do have a dedicated Q&A section at the end. So please do pop any questions you have in the Q&A box. And then when we do get to that Q&A session, we will go through your question in turn. Right, I'm going to stop now and pass on to Adam, who's going to be our first speaker of today.
Thanks, Lade. So firstly, we're going to take a look at why enhanced disclosure is required in the first place. Just a little bit of housekeeping in the first instance. For simplicity, most of the language that we're going to use in this presentation is based on the CAP code, which is obviously the non-broadcast version of the code. Although the broadcast version contains the same broad content, the wording is sometimes different. So as a general note, we would always encourage advertisers to, strongly advise them to check the specific wording of the applicable code rules. But with that housekeeping done, let's have a look at what rules are particularly important for today's topic. So we've got two on screen there. And it's clear from the CAP code, if we look at rule 2.1, that marketing communications must be obviously identifiable as ads. But specifically, it's the underlined part of rule 2.3, which we're particularly concerned with today. And that's making clear the commercial intent of an ad. Making clear an ad's commercial intent can be really challenging for advertisers. It's particularly challenging when the ad in question is aimed at children, which is obviously the focus of today's presentation. And the reason it is a particular challenge is because a child's critical understanding is in its early stages of development, which means extra steps have to be taken to ensure children are clear that certain marketing communications have commercial intent sat behind them. And those extra steps are what is known as enhanced disclosure, and they're the focus of today's presentation. So just staying with that topic of critical understanding for a moment. Critical understanding allows people to properly assess the commercial messages in marketing communications. It enables an individual to firstly recognize a marketing communication, and secondly, to understand its commercial intent. So children develop the ability to recognize marketing from a really young age. Their critical understanding is relatively well developed by the time they turn 8. And by the time they turn 12, their critical understanding is approaching the level held by adults. But younger children do tend to struggle with particular types of marketing and recognizing the commercial intent that sits behind them. And that's particularly the case for significantly integrated and highly immersive marketing in online environments. And there's been a real rise in that type of marketing in the last few years. This is because online platforms allow for editorial and marketing content to converge in ways that we didn't see before in more traditional types of advertising. These new types of marketing practices may lack traditional signifiers of commercial intent. For example, there might not be a clear distinction anymore in online platforms between editorial and advertorial content. So for that reason, for immersive and/or integrated marketing directed at children, enhanced disclosure is needed to make extra clear the commercial nature of an ad. And Dave's now going to talk us through this in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Adam. So yeah, I'm just going to have a look at when it's required. So when is enhanced disclosure required? So 3 key points there on there. But this mainly concerns when ads are appearing in third-party space, where the content of the marketing may be confused with the surrounding editorial content or other first-party content. So, for example, if an ad appears on Disney's own website, then it's likely to be an ad for Disney, and so is unlikely to need enhanced disclosure. But if that ad's appearing elsewhere, surrounded by other content, then it's likely to require the enhanced disclosure. So when it's likely to need enhanced disclosure is when it's directed at under 12s. So the selection of the media or the content of the marketing has been specifically directed at under 12s. So it's child content, and it's being directed at them. They're likely to need a greater sign that it is going to be marketing. Also, if it's highly immersive or significantly integrated into the surrounding editorial content. So what this means is, so if it features any prolonged or in-depth interactivity, a story and an audio-visual content, for example, is content like that is going to need to be need that enhanced disclosure. Significantly integrated marketing communication, so visually or otherwise integrated into the surrounding content, the editorial content. So if a display ad looks like part of the surrounding content, the separation between the advertising and the editorial content may become blurred, and so it's not going to be clear from what it's surrounding. We do have an example of that a little later on. And also if it's unlikely to be identified clearly from the context it appears in. So if key point here is if you direct highly immersive or significantly integrated marketing at under 12s, then it's going to need to be clearly identified from the context in which it appears. So Adam's already mentioned the rules 2.1 and 2.3, and so it's those rules that are key, and that what the ASA would look at if it was to get a complaint, and it's what the reason for enhanced disclosure in those examples is to ensure that it doesn't breach those rules. But Adam's now going to take a look at what is enhanced disclosure. So I'll hand back to Adam. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Yeah, so we've established why enhanced disclosure is used and when. So we're now going to have a look at what it actually consists of in practice. So you can see on the screen here that enhanced disclosure, and in other words, making extra clear to children that an ad is an ad, needs to be 3 things. It needs to be prominent, it needs to be interruptive, and it needs to be sufficient to identify the marketer and the commercial intent. So taking each of those in turn and just looking at them a little bit more. So prominence. So the disclosure, and that could well be the use of the word advertisement on the screen that the child is watching, for example. That should be within or next to the ad in question, but it also needs to be of a significant size and color to make it stand out. So we should be aiming to use color schemes that make it stand out and not blur into the background of an advert. Secondly, it needs to be interruptive. So the disclosure, for example, letting the child know that the ad is an ad, that should be readily apparent to a child, ideally before they engage with the content, or at the very least, as they engage with it. So as the medium that they're clicking on is activated, for example. And thirdly, it needs to be sufficient to identify the marketer and the commercial intent. Now, this could be achieved by using common company branding. If the marketer can satisfy the ASA that that branding is sufficiently well known by under 12s, and stating, for example, created by, and then the name of the brand. Other phrases like sponsored by or in association with a brand, they're not likely to be sufficient. And that's predominantly because in the past, the ASA has found that they're insufficient terms for adults. So obviously, by extension, they're also going to be insufficient when disclosing an ad, the fact an ad is an ad to a child. Just a few points to note before we move on. There really isn't a one-size-fits-all approach here. The online environment, as I'm sure we all know, is really dynamic. So marketers should look to create solutions that ensure younger children recognize they're being marketed to. Media owners can also help take steps to ensure ads are identifiable in their online spaces. This can lessen the burden on advertisers. For example, they could provide visual and spatial separation on web pages between editorial and advertorial content. And lastly, the guidance on which this presentation is based, as David's already mentioned this, it primarily applies to third-party space. That's predominantly what we're talking about here. So if we just take a look of some examples of highly immersive and significantly integrated media that could be subject to enhanced disclosure rules if directed at under 12s. Hopefully this provides a little more colour to what we're talking about and helps contextualize what we've been through so far. So the first example on the screen there, example of a paid and controlled influencer endorsement of a product could be, for example, a YouTube video, which includes a paid piece directed at under 12s. This would likely be subject to enhanced disclosure requirements because that would be classed as, a section of a video which contains an ad would likely be deemed as highly immersive and significantly integrated. So to satisfy the rules, at the start of the section explaining the paid endorsement, the video on screen could state the words advertisement, as we saw on the previous slide, provided that they use the correct kind of color scheme and it's in a significant size. That's likely to tick the prominence box, if you like, of the enhanced disclosure requirements. The vlogger could also explain at the beginning of the piece that they've been incentivized to produce the content by a particular brand. The fact they're mentioning that at the beginning of the piece is likely to tick the interruptive box. And the fact that they've made clear that they've been incentivized to produce the content by a particular brand, again, that's likely to be sufficient to identify the marketer and the commercial intent behind it. Looking at the second type of media on the screen there. So if you had an advertiser created game, you could, on the menu page prior to the loading of that game, state advertisement again in the top corner and explain that the game was created by, and then insert the name of a brand. And again, as we saw on the last slide, you'd again have to evidence to the ASA that under 12s are likely to have a significant appreciation of that brand. And if you can evidence that, then it's likely that created by X brand is likely to be sufficient for enhanced disclosure requirements. And finally, display advertising that looks like surrounding content could state advertisement in the banner and include recognizable branding. Given the limited time and space associated with ads like these kind of display adverts are likely to be okay, again, if the disclosure that the ad is an ad is sufficiently prominent and interruptive so that children realize from the point of engagement that the content is distinct from non-ads around it. And again, just a kind of note to say that this is by no means an exhaustive list. It essentially boils down to the fact that if there's a complaint about an ad lacking enhanced disclosure, marketers would be expected to show that under 12s are likely to understand they're being marketed to. Sometimes disclosure requirements for general audiences will be enough for children as well. But if you're advertising ads covered by the guidance, for example, if your ads are highly immersive, significantly integrated, directed at under 12s, you should really be looking to ensure that you've satisfied these enhanced disclosure requirements. So now I'm going to hand back to Dave, who's going to go through some ASA rulings that relate to these requirements and hopefully provide a bit more context.
That's great. Thanks, Adam. So yeah, as Adam says, I've got a couple of rulings just to go through on here, just to show some real life examples of when enhanced disclosure would be required. So if we take a look at the first one, we've got a Capri Sun ad here. And this was featured on the game section on the Nickelodeon site, nick.co.uk. So as you can see on the right hand side is how it would appear on the site, and just to make it clearer what the actual ad was, it's there on the left hand side, the middle box. So the ad had a cartoon image of a Capri Sun bottle dressed as a superhero flying, and the words Capri Sun were included in multiple places in the banner. There was an orange label with white text up in the top right hand corner saying advertisement, and the words Capri Sun competition were also included in the black banner with bold white text. The ad was featured between two other Nickelodeon game tiles, which were formatted identically to the ad in question, such as the same size and the same black banner along the bottom of the tile. The ASA challenged this ad to see if it was obviously identifiable as a marketing communication. And when they did, the ASA said that display ads that look like the surrounding content, or which may be confused with editorial content or the first party content, so from Nickelodeon, would likely to be required to have an enhanced disclosure. They also acknowledged that whilst the audience would be a mixture of ages, there would be a significant audience of unsupervised under 12s given the nature of the website in question. The ASA said the ad, which was in the games section, was formatted identically to the surrounding editorial content and presented in tiles that were the same size and shape as the editorial content, and also had the identical gaming banner there. So this meant that the ad was significant visually integrated into the surrounding content. So one of those points I mentioned before. And while both the name of the marketer and the word competition were displayed within the gaming banner, the formatting of the banner itself contributed to it being less identifiably separate from the surrounding editorial content. So the ASA felt that children would be unlikely to ID the content of this as an ad, even though it says advertisement. So this is where the enhanced disclosure comes into play, because it is disclosed, but given the nature of the audience, the nature of the content, enhanced disclosure would be required. So in summary, the ASA said that while advertisement had been used, the use of the colours blended with the overall ad and did not make the disclosure sufficiently prominent or interruptive for younger children to realise it was distinct from the surrounding non-ad content. And despite the fact advertisement was in capitals and a larger font, they still felt that was the case. The name of the marketer was in the ad, as you can see, but given it was incorporated into the ad graphic in a colour which matched the ad, it appeared integrated and wasn't prominent enough, for younger children to ID the advertiser. And therefore the ASA ruled that the ad was insufficiently labelled to enable young children to ID the marketer or the commercial intent of the ad. The ad didn't satisfy enhanced disclosure requirements and was found to have breached the two rules Adam mentioned earlier, 2.1 and 2.3. So the key point of this ruling, why we've included this, is to be aware of ads that look like the surrounding content due to the size, format, shape, as the surrounding editorial content and the native content that sits on a site. And to just say advertisement may not be enough in those cases where it's being aimed at younger children. So just be careful of that. So that's the first case study we look at. Hopefully that all was clear for you. Second case study we've got, again sitting on Nick Jr., and similar points were raised in other cases against IMC Toys. This concerns two rulings, one of which relates to Crybabies ad and another which focuses on the VIP Pets ad. And as you can see there, both of these ads featured on nick.co.uk again. In both instances, the ASA challenged if the ad was obviously identifiable as an ad to its audience. And as with the previous case, the ASA deemed that the ads were subject to enhanced disclosure requirements because a significant number of the audience would be under 12. You can see from the content there that this one is aimed at very young children, with things such as Paw Patrol being surrounded by there. And so it's going to be a significant audience under 12. And again, the ad was formatted identically to the surrounding editorial content with the same size and shape of tile, same purple banner that all the editorial content has there. Also, the formatting contributed it to being less identifiably separate from the surrounding content. Once again, it was determined enhanced disclosure requirements hadn't been complied with on this. Again, the word advertisement text does feature in there. As you can see, I'm not sure if it's identifiable on your screens, but above the logos in the same color as other surrounding content, it does say advertisement, but the ASA felt that was not particularly prominent, and the color palette used blended in with the rest of the ad. The advertisement text is only slightly larger than other surrounding editorial content, and so the ASA found that the disclosure was not prominent or interruptive enough for the children to realise the ad was distinct from non-advertising content. And also the name of the advertiser was in the ad, but incorporated it into the ad itself, again in a similar style and color. And so that also contributes to the integration with it of the surrounding content as well. So on this one, the idea of the marketer was also found to not be sufficient to enable young children to easily ID the commercial intent. So even ads limited by space or time, if they're videos, need labels to be prominent and interruptive to distinguish them from the surrounding content. Again, this one was found to breach 2.3. So hopefully these two examples do show that just saying advertisement, whilst that's what we ask for in most cases, that's what needs to be labelled in ads that are aimed at these under 12-year-olds, is not going to be sufficient to just say advertisement. Is going to need enhanced disclosure. So I hope those two examples make sense. It's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour this morning, but hopefully that all makes sense. And now we've got some time at the end. If there are any questions, feel free to ask, and me and Adam will do our best to answer those if you have any. If you want to pop them in the chat on Q&A.
We don't have any questions at the moment. We'll just give people some time to just type them in the Q&A box. We'll get to any questions that anyone may have.
Hopefully the fact that there's been no questions means it's all been quite clear to you today. As I did mention earlier, me and Adam both work for Copy Advice, and that links to that is available on the ASA website, and as I say, is a free service. And if I do say ourselves, it's a great service because it is free and you do get a response within 24 hours if you do have any queries. And as I say, that's pre-publication, so feel free to use us. But let's see if we've got any questions.
Yeah, someone did ask, unfortunately they weren't able to join at the first bit, so we could go back through and clarify what the rule 2.3 means. Like, what is the key principles of that rule?
Yeah, sure. Don't know if you want to get the slide back up, but I think, basically rule 2.1, you have to make clear that marketing communications are obviously identifiable as such. And along with 2.1, 2.3 is also particularly important for these kind of rulings. And it's particularly the second part of rule 2.3 that they were concerned with here, and that's making clear the commercial intent that sits behind an ad. So the ASA found in those case studies that hopefully you did catch at the end there, that the commercial intent wasn't obvious from the context, specifically when you're talking about them being directed at under 12s. So yeah, rules 2.1 and 2.3 are the key ones here. Rule 2, they're both very widely used and cross lots of ASA rulings. And enhanced disclosure is no exception to that rule. They're definitely the two that are very much used for these kind of cases. I hope that answers your question. Let me know if not.
Thanks for that, Adam. We'll give it a couple minutes. Obviously, if no one has any questions, then that's fine. We won't drag it out any longer than needs be. And like Dave said, if you do have any questions after that, you can just direct them to the copy advice service, which I will be sending you a link to after this session. So on the basis that, oh, we've got another question come through. Do you have examples of correct and incorrect enhanced disclosures with branding advertising on Roblox? Apologies, I'm not pronouncing that properly.
Roblox.
Roblox, sorry.
Yeah. I don't think we've come across much advertising on Roblox. Yeah, I'm not aware of any precedent in that area. It's the same principles will apply. So I'm sorry we don't have any actual examples, but the same principle will apply if there is advertising on Roblox. Then it's going to need to stand out from the editorial content or the games that appear on Roblox. I have a basic knowledge of Roblox because I have a couple of kids that have played it before, so I have seen it, but I haven't seen ads on there when I've seen them play. But yeah, it would need to just be make clear that it's not part of the game that it is featuring an ad, so it's going to have to be different from the particular game that it appears in. It's going to have to look different from the game itself, because as I say in those examples, just saying the word advertisement, it may not be enough. I'm not sure on Roblox's demographics, but I know that it is very popular amongst under 12, so it is going to need to be enhanced disclosure and made completely obvious. It's just going to have to be completely separate from that content that appears on there. I know there's lots of different games, so whatever specific game it appears in or page on their app, it would need to stand out from the editorial content. So haven't got any examples, I'm afraid, but hopefully that all made sense.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. Since we haven't had any other questions come through, I'll push forward. Obviously, if a question comes up, then we will get to that. So if I just quickly skip through to the resources page, just so you know what support is available, just in case you do have any questions following the session. So quickly get onto that. Right, so here's a list of some advice and resources. Of course, you can follow us on social media. If you, for any updates on any events or training or any updates on the advice that we're giving, please do sign up to our Insight articles and any updates, so you can be the first to hear about any updates to advice. We run regular training seminars and bespoke presentations, details of which are on our website. As Dave and Adam championed before, we have our copy advice team who are really great for answering any queries that you have. We also have an online database of advice. So that's free advice that's available on our website. So if you just type in a topic in the search bar, it should come up with all the advice that's available on a particular topic. And on Wednesdays, we publish our weekly rulings. So to keep up to date with our precedent, you can have a look at that. Right, we're going to end the session now. I'd like to take this time to thank Dave and Adam for delivering the presentation this morning, and to thank you all for joining. And for those who are going on annual leave this year, I know some are already early, have a Merry Christmas and have a Happy New Year. And yeah, we'll end the session now. A copy of the recording, like I said, will be sent to you along with some slides and any additional resources that we have.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.